March 14, 2012, my son Thomas lost his battle with the disease of addiction. I now belong to a club that no parent should ever belong to. Do you know the signs? Do you know the trends that children are doing in today's world? Do you know the signs and symptoms? Do you know the signs and symptoms of drug abuse? I want to empower and educate Long Islanders by bringing a force of professionals and how to prevent the disease of addiction. Long Island in Crisis. Good evening and welcome to Long Island in Crisis. This show is dedicated to educating and empowering family members with loved ones that are dealing with the disease of addiction. Also for people who are dealing with the disease of addiction to help you get help. We need to do better as a society. Suffolk County, #1 in New York State for deaths from heroin and opiate addiction. Every day I listen to parents tell me, well, they're only drinking beer and smoking pot. That's the gateway to everything else. And until you want to be educated on those facts, we're going to continue this horrible destruction of an entire generation. We have some incredible people that also work in government, and I'm really happy to welcome them tonight. We have District Attorney Madeline Singas from Nassau County. We have ADA Maureen McCormick and ADA Renee Fechter. And I sit on the Nassau County Heroin Task Force, and I know that we're working in conjunction. The two counties are working together. And you did some great legislation last year.
Yeah.
That hopefully will pass the chamber this year.
Right.
So can you outline that a little bit for us?
Sure, Linda. I mean, we also talk to parents every day who lose their children to addiction, who, are just trying to do the right thing by their kids. Sometimes we try to get in before it's too late. Sometimes we can make a difference, and sometimes it's too late. So we looked at it from just a realistic perspective of what's going on in the county. What is it that we can do better? So we came up with some legislation. What we heard a lot from parents is, why can't you arrest the dealers who gave the drugs that actually ended up in the overdose that killed my child? So some of the legislation that we worked on does just that, holds dealers accountable for death.
Excellent.
And that was one major prong of the legislation. And the other was to sort of make sure that both heroin and cocaine are treated the way they're dealt with on the street, the way they're sold, the way people take it. Taking in mind the reality of how the drug is used and how the drug impacts people, so that before, the law was treating heroin weights and cocaine weights the same. And yet we know that they are treated very differently by users and by dealers. So we try to accommodate for that, so that dealers who are dealing heroin could be held accountable at the higher levels that they should be, and also that they cannot be, they cannot be considered for diversion, which we found was a loophole in the system. A lot of dealers were just saying that they were users and then getting diversionary sentences.
So diversion is if I'm arrested and I say I have a problem, that I could be mandated to treatment or mandated to
Correct.
to bypass being convicted of a crime at that point.
And we are all for
Yes.
that in the right circumstances,
Yes.
absolutely, because we think treatment is an absolutely necessary component. We're not going to arrest our way out of this crisis. We need real and effective treatment, so this by no means undermines that. But we have to make sure that the right people are getting treatment and that the right people are being prosecuted. And the laws as they existed did not allow for that. And once they took discretion away from prosecutors and gave it to judges statutorily to decide who's in diversion, a lot of loopholes were created. So this legislation tries to remedy that and make sure that dealers are held accountable, and that the weights are accurately reflected in the way the drugs are being used so that we can make a difference in the prosecution of these cases. And, for us, it's always been about making sure that we educate.
Yes.
So prevention is a huge part of this. Prosecute, give us the right tools so that we can prosecute the right people. And also treatment. For us, treatment is a huge component of this. Without it,
Absolutely.
we're not going to get out of this cycle. So,
No, prevention and education is the way to get out of the cycle. Because if we don't start to talk to the parents and the kindergartners of today, 5 years from now, we're in the same boat.
right.
Or worse.
Well, we're in a lot of the high schools. Maureen can talk a lot about, and Renee, the programming that we do with our schools. We're in high schools. We're trying to get in even earlier at middle
Yeah,
schools
we
because
have to
we
get in.
often find that it's too late by the time you're in high school.
Oh,
But talking
absolutely.
to parents, talking to kids, and just saying, like you said when you first started off, a lot of parents, and we hear the same thing. My kid is just smoking a little pot and drinking a little bit. They don't know that their kid is addicted to heroin. So how do you find out? Look for the signs so that you do know, and let's try to get this kid some help to beat that addiction. And B, talking to teachers and people who can recognize the signs earlier and earlier, because
has to be
children are being addicted so much earlier than we've ever imagined, and it's really turned into a crisis situation.
I speak in treatment facilities around the state because when people are in treatment and their fog has lifted a little bit, they've never heard what they've done to their families. So it's just a different perspective. But the overall age, when I say, if you could go back and speak to yourself, not to start, what would the age be? Overwhelmingly, it's 12, sometimes 10,
Wow.
sometimes 10. So what's up with that? Why are our children so wanting to escape their reality? That's a question that has to be asked. And we have to do better. Parents have to acknowledge that their behavior at home has an effect on, but unfortunately in today's day and age, we have divorce, we have alcoholism or the disease of addiction in parents, domestic violence. We have all of those things at a probably a higher level. I don't know if it's a higher level than when we grew up. I don't know.
Well, what
the
you really
difference is.
have also is social media.
Yeah.
And the influence. You were talking earlier about gateway drugs and about alcohol and pot, and there's such a media push about how pot isn't that bad, how marijuana should be legalized everywhere. New York
And
State.
it is legalized. It's legal in other states. So if I'm a kid, well, this is legal in other states. Mom, it's no big deal. My son said it to me.
Legal equals safe in a kid's mind. And it
course.
also, we actually have some parents who, believe this or not, the principals in schools have told us, can you address the issue of driving while high on pot, because the parents counsel their kids to smoke pot rather than drink because they think it's not as bad. Nothing, of course, could be further from the truth. The issue of underage drinking as a gateway to the use of other and harder substances is tremendously important as well. Every parent, they think to themselves, well, I was a kid, and when I was a kid, maybe the drinking age was 18. But what happens is you start patterns, and you start with the peer groups wanting more and more and better highs and different highs, and then you have them dumping all the pills into a bowl in the middle of the room. Let's just, if we could for 1 second talk about underage drinking. There is
Still the number one killer, I do believe.
you do believe, and you are correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, and I do believe it's illegal, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Still illegal.
Still the number one abused drug in the country, and that's in all age ranges. But as far as underage drinking goes, you have so many people, including some law enforcement, who don't want to, quote unquote, ruin the kid's life by breaking up that underage party, right? By holding the kid accountable for that underage drinking. The district attorney we have the social host law in Nassau County. There is an anonymous toll-free number to report an underage party. It's 1-866-under-21. That centralized number will reach out to a local police department who will come and break up that party and hopefully, actually bring some of the kids in, because this is our point of interception
Absolutely.
and
Right.
education.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the people who think they're doing people a favor by
Yes.
ignoring it, not reporting it, letting it slide are in
Oh, they're just
fact,
kids. It's just a rite of
Yeah.
passage. It's not a big deal.
It's
but
such
for
a
one of those
mistake.
kids, 1 in 7, 1 in 9, I don't care. One of those kids, 2 of those kids, that switch went off, and the disease of addiction is like wildfire in their brain.
right.
So they're not going to be able to drink enough, smoke enough. They're always going to be looking for the next best high.
So what people need to know, if we could impose on you, Linda, to get this
Absolutely.
word out, is that although there is a misdemeanor social host law in Nassau County, the district attorney has created a program where if you're under 25, because we're going to give it up to that adolescent brain development.
Okay.
If you're under 25, so you got a lot of college kids, we've got a bunch of colleges in Nassau County as well, and you are hosting an underage party, or you are in a house and you're allowing kids underage to drink, you're not going to get stuck with that misdemeanor conviction. We're going to use that, as we use everything, to try and get you help. It means that we're going to send you for alcohol education, some community service. We believe strongly that you have to feel the effects of the interaction with the criminal justice system, but you're not going to get stuck with a conviction at the end. We're hoping to save you, not brand you as a convict after that.
So it's always goes back to, well, I don't want to ruin that kid's life. You may be saving that kid's life.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You know,
And that's why the discussion has to change.
My son said to me one time, right before, a few weeks before he died, at least I never got arrested. And I said that would never have been the worst thing that could have happened here,
Yeah,
No, in fact,
unfortunately.
right.
they had the Assembly Standing Committee on Substance Abuse. There was a round table where people were testifying, and the mindset of the legislators was along the lines of, we want to focus on treatment. We don't need the criminal justice system involved in this. And you, Linda, have introduced the DA, Renee already knew because Renee knows everything, to so many families who said, it's the criminal justice system. We need you to arrest these kids to get them the treatment
Absolutely.
that they need. And that was, I have to tell you, that was not the sentiment in the room. The sentiment in the room was there should be no arrests at all, and everybody should get treatment. That would be great if that was reality, but that's not reality.
That's not reality. So we need reality. We need
And
treatment.
sometimes, what people don't recognize is we can force treatment in a way that parents cannot.
Absolutely.
So that is what is an added
And
incentive.
it's also the accountability. You're not accountable to me as a
Right.
parent. You're accountable to the judge.
Exactly.
I tried to get a PINS petition on Thomas at the age of 16, and they told me he was too old. He'd be 18 before we even got this really. I was like, he's too old at the age of 16.
Right.
It's insanity.
It is insanity.
Yeah.
It is.
Part of the problem is you've got competing philosophies that are going on. There's one philosophy about not widening the net, which makes sense. Don't want to get people more inveigled in the system than is necessary. But the other one that we're talking about is early intervention.
Yes.
And sometimes sorting that out can cause some tragedies. Whereas, for example, in the family court, well, we really don't want to deal with it too much at this point because we don't want them to go too deep into the system. But that should not translate to do nothing.
Right.
Exactly.
So there's a balance in there. So you've got two very, very different philosophies. Sometimes they don't work well together. And that's when we hear this conversation coming up.
But
And
you
it-
have the opportunity then in family court to say, you're going to go to treatment, and the family is also going to go to treatment because we need the child to be in a healthy environment. And most times, a lot of times, the family is equally as sick and the enablers of the behavior
Well,
for
absolutely.
their children.
I mean, we found when we put money into New Hope, a significant amount of money so that we can get a crisis center on Long
Yes.
Island, because we talked to so many parents whose kids were using, overdosing, and then brought back to life by Narcan, brought into a hospital emergency room. Parents called. Parents for the first time said, oh my God, I didn't even know my kid was addicted to heroin, and now you're telling me they were brought back from death practically by this drug Narcan. What am I supposed to do now?
Right.
And hospitals would say, you have to go now. We can't admit you. You're done. Take this piece of
You've
paper.
been here for 20 minutes.
Right.
And don't, this is, and I've seen it, parents showed me the release papers. Do not use heroin again.
Yeah.
That was the
that's
plan.
right, that's the plan. And then send them away. Now, here are these parents who knew nothing about what was going on in their son or daughter's life, bringing this kid back home who's withdrawing, often violently, from this addiction.
Yes.
With no guidance, no support, no avenue of where to go, and left to deal with it on their own. And by the time they start making phone calls, clearing it through insurance, trying to find a program that will work, that kid is right back out, looking for their next high. It's too late. So we said we have to intervene at that moment so that
Yes.
someone can help this person and their family through this. And, we came up with the Crisis Center, and thankfully New Hope is able to play that role for us and say, you know what, we will pick them up. We'll go to the emergency room, take that kid, give the parents the support they need, help them try to find a longer-term program, find effective treatment, because what's going on now is
Is unacceptable.
It is unacceptable.
But I know
completely.
in Albany also is another bill for the 72-hour hold. So that if you are brought in on a Narcan reversal, you're going to be released. We're holding you for 48 or 72 hours because then at least a social worker, someone can start to speak to the brain that's coming out of the fog. Gives a little bit of time to give them the opportunity to get them someplace. As soon as you street them, they're going back to get high.
Right.
And that one more time doesn't happen for a lot of people.
So I think that, well, first of all, Renee, of course, knew about New Hope, and New Hope has been in business for about 30 years. But the DA said, how can it be possible that this is not available for 24/7 admissions? And the money that's she has used out of asset forfeiture funds, not taxpayer money, asset forfeiture funds, and that was hard fought to get that through the
Yeah, it was.
legislature. That money will allow for it. They're still recruiting the people that they need to do this, but everybody should know that they are available right now. New Hope is at 150 Buffalo Avenue
In
Buffalo
Freeport.
Street, yeah, in
in
Freeport.
Freeport. I actually know the number. It is 516-546-7070. New Hope has a transport van. They will come and get the person in distress from wherever they are
And
if
that is
that's
key.
needed.
That is key. They
24/7.
can't come home. They can't say, oh, Mom, please, I just want to take a shower at home. I just want to, just one more night in my bed. It's okay. Because as a parent, so when you look at your children, you see that the baby face that always was, and you so want to believe what they're telling you. And it just, it's a horrible place for a parent to be in.
But what New Hope offers to people, besides for the obvious thing of hope, is that time.
Yes.
That time to not hit the pavement after the Narcan reversal, the time to go where there's a hot shower, hot free food. This is free to
Yes.
the person who's addicted. The New Hope staff that we talked to talked about how they engage the family. They advise the family. They help the family and the addicted person with the godforsaken paperwork to get to the next step of
To get to the
treatment.
next
It's
step.
completely
And they-
overwhelming for
They
parents.
give them withdrawal medications
Yes.
so that they're not so uncomfortable. Because I've been told, insurance companies always say you don't die. You can die. You can go into seizures from withdrawing from alcohol. Or
Wow.
benzos. You can't die from the withdrawal, but you'll want to kill yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And I can give you plenty of parents that their kids have done exactly that.
But this is exactly why hospitals release them, because of this medical
Necessity.
yes, the diagnosis or
Only
the
shooting 30
prognosis.
bags a day, it's all right. My
Right.
son, we were told one time, he's not high enough for treatment.
And- and-
Should we go outside and
Oh my
should he
God,
shoot 5 more
wow.
bags? What?
Right.
So-
That was the impetus for us to just say,
It's just
Come
the
on.
insanity of
Right.
it. The window opens this much.
Everybody in treatment knows that the best time to intervene is at the point of crisis. We knew that early in the criminal justice system, not to wait 9 months till we get to sentencing to figure out treatment, but to do it as early as possible was the theory behind DTAP, task, judicial intervention. I can recall very, very strongly many years back when I got a phone call one morning, my brother in Switzerland screaming that I had no idea he was an addict. And he was in a hospital, had a motorcycle accident, and he was saying, "Big brother, you're a lawyer, tell them not to treat me like an animal." Well, Swiss doctors did not care very much for a New York lawyer. But I can remember just sitting there totally unable to help as he screamed as he was going through withdrawal on the phone 2,500 miles to the other side. So so withdrawal can be it won't kill you, but it's a bad thing. Now we need help to get New Hope going. We need
Yes.
doctors and we need nurses. So if
Yep.
anybody's listening to this,
No, it's true, because
You know somebody who
the
needs-
money that, the $585,000 that has been set aside to get this really up and running, that 24/7 full functioning, they have posted out looking for nurse practitioners and psychiatrists or
physician,
a physician, and they have posted this, and still, it's been weeks now and have not been able to fill the position. So it took a long time to get the money to
it
them. They didn't want to post for the position, of course, until they got the money. They now have it. If there are people who are interested in this field and have these credentials, they should contact New Hope because they need your help.
Oh, absolutely. And there are plenty of incredible people around that will give even more of themselves to get that up and going. So I'll put that on my website also. So we'll spread the word throughout New York State.
Great. Thank
And
you.
we'll be right back after this message.
Gates is the #1 fence provider on Long Island, with the most inventory in stock, including vinyl, chain link, and aluminum. Gates offers a custom powder-coated system that prevents rust throughout the life of the fence. We carry fence tools to the trade. We even stock wood, rail, and glass hardware as well. Shannon Gates has our very own patented locking system. The next time you need fencing of any sort, both commercial and private, give Shannon Gates a call at 631-392-4330. You can also visit our website at shannongatesinc.com.
Galaxy Luxury Coach is a full-service limousine and party bus company. Family-owned and operated, we are an industry leader with over 25 years of experience in providing best-in-class luxury transportation for your special event. Whether it's your precious wedding day, an all-day wine tour out east, your high school prom, that special birthday, or just an amazing night on the town, our professional chauffeurs stand ready to ensure your special event is truly special. Galaxy Luxury Coach has one of the largest and modern party bus fleets in the New York area. Our party buses are simply nightclubs on wheels. Concert sound systems, light shows, lasers and strobes, multicolor LED lighting brilliantly lights your party bus inside and out. For corporate and more laid-back events, we will cater to your specific needs and requests. What sets Galaxy aside from all others in the luxury transportation industry is our attention to detail in customizing our services to your special event. At Galaxy, it's all about you and your guests. Galaxy customers return time and time again because they know they can trust Galaxy to help deliver those lifetime memorable moments. Step aboard and let your Galaxy experience begin.
Yo, what's up, y'all? This is me, GMC, in the place to be, the greatest MC in history. There will never be an MC greater than me. And right about now, the only place for you to be is with the one and only Madhousetv. You are the man.
Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis, and we are having an equally tantalizing conversation off air. So much work still to be done.
Absolutely.
So much work to be done.
But
And
that's why shows like this are so important, Linda. And
how do
you,
we engage parents, though? How do we engage parents?
look, we try, and I think we have to do a much better job at it. A lot of parents just want to think, oh, you know what, that's not my problem. That's a South Shore issue. That's a race issue. That's an ethnic issue. That's a poverty issue. It's not. It's all of our issues. It's everywhere. It is a great equalizer, I say. It hits every community equally and devastatingly. And parents have to wake up to the reality that it could be their kids. So they need to start listening. They need to start tuning in, going to the programs that we're offering, demanding more programs from government, demanding more information.
Demanding more education.
Yeah, because this is a crisis. We're in a crisis. Our kids are in crisis.
You know, again, going back to why do kids want to use at the age of 10 or 12? You know, I got my nails done the day before Easter, and all these mommies coming in with little girls. They were on their phones, and their little 5-year-old is going, Mommy, look at, shh, shh. You need to all disconnect, and you need to interact with one another, because if you're not speaking to them, someone else will be. You know, our good friend, Dr. Jeff Reynolds, I presented with him somewhere one night, and he said, if there was a phone call that went out to the school district that said there's a big black van that's kidnapping children, this auditorium would be overflowing.
That's right.
The influx of calls would be overwhelming, and the big black van is here, and it's called the disease of addiction.
Right.
But nobody's paying attention to that. And little Johnny at age 10, 11, 12 knows a lot more than you give him credit for.
I think a lot of parents feel that there's shame associated with it.
And
And
that's
until
gotta
we
go.
change that
Yeah.
conversation, until we change that mindset, it's going to keep happening. They sort of want to move away and step into the shadows because they feel that there's some kind of shame associated with
the shame
it.
and stigma
Instead
of the
doing
disease,
what
yeah.
you're doing and coming out and saying, no, we need to talk about this and we need to move forward from this point. Not tuck it away somewhere because it's here. Our kids are confronting it every single day in schools. The people that they're talking to, the homes that they're going to, the parties that they're involved with, and yet nobody wants to talk about it. How
Right.
can that be?
I don't know, how can it be?
That's an amazingly good point. I always thought that my own generation really failed because when I was growing up, the movies didn't glorify heroin. I mean, you saw it as a bad thing, and you saw people dying, and you saw your rock stars disappearing off the face of the earth. Then we got older, we had kids, and you know what? We don't want to talk about that. And we knocked out cigarette smoking. Look at the
Yes.
who would have
Yes.
thought? That was done, heavy campaign about cigarette smoking. Your own children were turning you in. But we didn't do that with drugs. Now we are. Now we see it, and it's going to take a while for that to catch up. I do think there's a momentum going on. But I look back with hindsight and say, my goodness, that's right. We really weren't stressing it in the last 15, 20 years, and it's your 25-year-olds that are dying.
Yes.
The
That
same
age
ones who came
bracket.
through that school
Yes.
system. So
Well, the terrible tragedy of it is that it has taken it to be normalized in order to remove some of the shame. People still feel it, but it is no longer, a guy who looks disheveled in a back alley shooting up. It is the high school cheerleader and the honor student, and it affects every community at every level. And so maybe that's allowing your show, Linda.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you're out talking about this helps to remove some of that stigma. Now, the office has a program called Not My Child that goes out for free to high
Yes.
schools to engage students. And we're always working to upgrade it and to make it more engaging. And Kyle Rose is the DA's Deputy Executive for Community Affairs. And the office can be reached through regular number, right, 516-571-3800, to engage us in any one of the 4 high school programs that we have that are free. Not My Child addresses
You
this
know-
specific issue.
So I've spoken to, in Northport, they have such a great program, and the Board of Education is right behind them, and they have a drug and alcohol counselor within the school district, and they have some really phenomenal teachers. and I've said it out at different school districts, when everyone has English, so because the schools will tell you we don't have time to keep this on the, we can't take time away from other studies. If the kids aren't alive, they're really not going to test well. So, but my point is, everybody takes English. Why can't you read a book, our friend Larry Glenn's, Forgiving Kevin? Why can't you read a book about a teacher and a Hall of Famer lacrosse coach, the father, with his youngest son who died ultimately, the disease claimed his life, but his whole journey through the disease of addiction. Why can't we read that book and open the discussion?
Right.
Open the discussion. We need to
Incorporate it into the rest of
incorporate
it.
into
The curriculum.
the math teacher. She does Project 72, and people say, well, what's Project 72? They figured out how many people die in an hour in the United States, which I think the number is up than that. But instead of calling it the SAD Club or the MAD Club or whatever, it's
Right.
Project 72. Well, what is
Right.
it starts to engage.
Conversation.
Yes.
Actually,
And you're
So
right.
why,
I mean, even
why can't we even do something, like that?
I don't know. I mean, we
Summer
are
reading
out there.
programs in the library.
Right.
Coping skills, when little ones are reading, why can't we read to them about
Well,
about,
absolutely,
you know,
coping skills. How do you deal with that? How do you say
how do you
no?
create that?
How do you, I mean, we talk a lot about when we go out and Maureen does her drunk driving choices and consequences program in the school. And I always talk to the kids if I am ever introducing it about having the courage to say, you know what, I'm not getting in that car, or I'm not going to that party, but why can't we teach our kids to do that through the schools?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I tell parents all the time, first off, working with Kim Lauby, who does Hugs, the program, she's such a phenomenal woman with prevention. But creating your own healthy family policy at home, number one. How do you deal with drugs and alcohol in your family? But then when we have these children going to parties, if they're uncomfortable, how do they get out of there?
Right.
Have a text code.
Yes.
We
We address this.
is grandma
Yeah, we
at the
do.
house yet?
Right. We
Yes, I'm
address
coming to
this.
pick you up right now.
And the other thing that we often talk about is with the phones, we can't have access to them. So we say to parents when they're in these auditoriums, just get your kids codes so that we can access the phones. And maybe they don't want to give it to you. Maybe you don't want to put it in an envelope, put it away. But you know what? There might come a time when we need it in terms of our prosecution to find out who that dealer is, where the drugs are coming from. We need access to those phones. And if they just gave us their passwords, a lot of parents aren't thinking that. But
Yeah.
in those phones is a wealth of information that could help the next kid or their own kid.
Absolutely. Ultimately, the dealer they may have given them a hot shot, but it was the person suffering with the disease of addiction that made the decision to use it. And that's ultimately still who we have to get to.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have a client if they weren't addicted. So we need to do better.
Linda, you raised the issue of mobilizing prevention efforts, and you're part of our task force.
Yes.
Our office has two major task forces that we do. One is the Long Island Youth Safety Coalition, which actually Maureen gave it a kick in the pants to get going, and it's been around for 8 years. And as a matter of fact, it does large, what I call trade show events to empower teachers and parents to where to find the resources. The next one is going to be it'll be one on May 26th out at Western Suffolk BOCES. We're going to do an event there, and we're doing another one in December.
Coming over state lines?
This is the Long Island. The drugs do.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And so do the dealers. And in December, we'll dedicate the annual conference to youth and substance abuse. And again, it's a resource. People come to find out where are your speakers, where are your books, where are those things you were talking about. The other one is, of course, the Nassau County Heroin Prevention Task Force, which
Yes.
you're on. And that, through its 5 committees, each committee generates multiple events. So I think in the last 6 weeks alone, we had 5 major events, typically 200 to 300 people at each. We did a big one on the medically assisted treatment,
Yes.
destigmatizing it. We did one for the school nurses and the teachers, packed. And we did just a big drug reclamation form, how to empty out your medicine cabinets to shed the meds, which, by the way, on April 30th, the DEA is back in business, and they'll be doing another one. And that helps bring attention to it. What we're looking for is things that parents can do.
Yes.
You know, if it's too overwhelming or whatever, it's
Just
not
be
going to happen.
proactive. You
Their
know.
neighbor's kid died. Maybe now I'd like to do a little something. So maybe you do the drug reclamation. Now, I happen to be from Northport, and my wife and I were on the original board with
Yes.
Anthony. And you mentioned that one of the big projects they had, which I loved, because I have their T-shirt, was Book Junkies.
Yes.
And it was a whole gang of kids who were stressing the kinds of books they could read through their book club. Again, many years ago, back in the roaring 60s when drugs were all over the island, a friend of mine from Columbia opened a little book club. And we would spend our summers reading the most amazing things. But you had kids of all different sizes, including the druggies. And they found friendship in that book club. And I never, at first thought, oh, come on, give me a break. A book club? How's that going to do? It did.
Yes.
It really
Well,
was
activities
communicating.
and keeping kids busy, and we're talking about the police athletic league. And
Just alternatives to hanging
alternatives.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
we need to work
Alternatives
on
to
those.
hanging out.
You know,
It has to be fun. It has to be engaging. It has to be all of those things. But the kids are going to have their first drink with their sports club. Let's face it. You know, it's not some big dude with a hoodie pulling your kid in an alley and pouring alcohol down their throat or putting a pill in there. You know, it's their peers. So you need to know who they're hanging out with, what they're doing. Why
And
can't
it's,
we
the, and it's
have
the parents of their
Yes.
peers, too. I mean, look, you know, I have 14-year-olds, so now we're entering a phase where I know there's going to be house parties. I
Yes.
know that there are some homes where
And
people think
back-talking,
it's
maybe?
okay.
No.
It's a whole new world.
It's a whole new world,
Right? It's
yes.
a whole new world. But you know that there are houses in a community where people know that that's where all the kids are going to get drunk, and they think it's cool, and that's we have to change that perception of.
There was just a mother and a grandmother. I don't know what state it was. Did you read that? She wanted to be known as the fun mom. Her child is dead. 14 years old, I want to say. She didn't have custody of him, probably for, as a parent, good reason. But the grandmother was in on it too. And now there's a child that's dead.
Right, like how do we shake these people into the reality of.
Well, obviously you have sick people raising this child. So even in my community in Kings Park and Fort Salonga, we had the junior in high school and a freshman in high school. They found their parents overdosed. The father was dead, and I don't know if the mother is coming back really to where she'll be able to care for them again. But we always assume it's the children that are in trouble. We have a lot of kids that are living with these
Yes,
secrets.
absolutely.
That's definitely true, but there's the broader problem of, and I'm going to put it on my generation, of wanting to be friends with your kids. And there's nothing wrong with being friends with your kids, but it can't outdo you being the parent
Yes.
of your kids. So this desire that we have for our kids to be as cool as we weren't, to
Right.
have the hot car, to have the cool house where kids can come and it's okay, my parents are cool. You know, we are not helping our kids. We are creating
No.
a situation where we are leading them down a path to complete destruction. The stats are terrible on this. But I would, you know, we talk about this at the Choices and Consequences program in Not My Child. We're doing it, they're out at Mineola High School tonight.
Right.
Talking to them. But contracts for safety, the thing you're
Yes.
talking about, where there's a deal in place that someone's going to come and get you, no questions asked, a parent.
Absolutely, but it can't
Right.
be, because I worked with Oasis on their Talk to Prevent and all of those things that came down, and they had I was like, you can't even put this out in the public. I promise I will not drink till the age of 21. What did that do for us? You know,
Right.
you need to have a different code so that I will come and pick you up,
Right.
no questions asked. We're not
Right.
going to have a discussion that night.
Right.
We are going to have a discussion, but it's not going to be the discussion that I'm going to yell at you. I'm proud that you called me to get yourself
Right.
out of there. I'm proud of the decisions. Now, how do we move forward? How do you negotiate around your friends who you don't want to be around anymore?
Right.
Have that texting code for any situation
Any
with your
situation.
child that is the come and get me code. Have that child make sure they have money to get home, that emergency money or an Uber account that they can get out of any situation
Yes.
that they're uncomfortable in. And the contracts for safety, all of it. is incredibly important. And this thing about having that password, we have heartbroken parents who are not able to trace back the dealer
That's not
because we can't get
Right.
into phones. So I believe
And
me,
again, though, from a parent's point of view, it really doesn't matter who gave Thomas that last dose that night. It really doesn't, because he made the decision to use that. Ultimately, he made the decision to use that. I could try to blame it on someone else, but ultimately it was his disease that killed him.
I completely understand that, but the district attorney has made it her.
Absolutely.
We
But-
have to cut off the supply as well.
Right.
And
We have to
Oh,
hit
without a doubt.
supply and demand, because we're not going to be able to do it.
no, it's a
One-sided.
multifaceted approach.
No, it has to be
Multifaceted, it's
multifaceted,
multi-pronged.
yeah.
We have to hit all of them, but these guys need to be held accountable for the
Without
poison that
a
they're
doubt.
pushing on the street and killing our kids.
Yeah.
So we're not going to let up on that. We're going to do it in a much more smart way, in a much more innovative way, in a way that we make sure that the people who are addicted are getting the treatment that they need. But we're not going to let up on the prosecution. of
Oh
it.
no, I'm love it. That.
We're in
and
a
I will tell
commercial
you,
now, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I'm not
no,
a fan of that.
Not yet.
Oh.
We're going to go to commercial, and we'll be right back before Renee says something.
There we go.
You know you already want a Toyota, but when you want more from your Toyota store, you want Smithtown Toyota, where every Toyota comes with Smithtown Toyota's Toyota for Life program, giving you lifetime New York State inspections, lifetime 10% discounts on all parts and service, 2 years of complimentary oil changes, 2 years of scheduled maintenance, and more, all at no cost to you, plus low clear-out deals on every Toyota in stock. Get more from your Toyota store. Hurry to Smithtown Toyota.
Dunkin' Donuts are always fresh. I made the donuts. We make them at least twice every day. Time to make the donuts. Not a few kinds, like supermarket. I made the donuts. Time to make the donuts. But up to 52 varieties. The donuts. Time to make the donuts. I made the donuts. Dunkin' Donuts, up to 52 varieties, fresh day and night. No supermarket can say.
Hi, I'm Tom Mealy from Madhouse TV, and when I'm not at the studio, I'm here at the Harrison Law Group. This is my real job. And this January 2015, Brett and I are putting together a show called Legal Straight Talk. It'll be aired on Cablevision as well as here at Madhouse TV. You need to tune in. This information that we're going to be giving the public is the real deal. It's all about what you should do, what you shouldn't do. So tune in this January 2015 for a new episode of Legal Straight Talk.
Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis, and Renee's going to behave.
I will try. It's a tough
So we were just discussing some of the stats because, again, my son didn't wake up and decide to be a heroin addict. Cigarettes, pot, alcohol were the first gateway drugs. And our friend Anthony Rizzuto will tell you that if he's treated 1,000 patients and 500 of them are heroin addicts, 500 of them, 100%, started with alcohol, pot, and cigarettes.
Right.
Not everyone goes on to use heroin, but all of the people that are opiate dependent now started with those gateway drugs.
How scary is that?
That's frightening. But what parents don't seem to understand is that switch gets turned on in an adolescent brain that does not get put out. It doesn't get turned off. It grows. It gets bigger and bigger, and they need more and more and better stuff. That high is never going to be enough. So to your fact, Maureen, that, hey, you know what? My 15-year-olds are downstairs, they're having a party, and I'm going to let them drink because at least I'm controlling. I'm with them. They're not going to, die in the snow.
Right, I'd rather have them drinking
right.
at home than drinking outside of my home. And that's just such a dangerous concept.
It's would you also let them then go drive a car?
Right,
Oh, but they're underage for that.
right.
So where do you draw the line? That's not being cool. That's being ridiculous.
And on some level, I find that it's almost encouraging because they're like, you know what, we'll take care of these kids now in high school, so when they get to college, they're going to know how to handle it. Well, then why don't we wait till they get to college when they're older, a little more mature, making decisions? Something might change in their lives where they won't want to be doing
But
that.
who says that that's a rite of passage in college,
Exactly.
too?
Like, why does it have to
Why
be?
can't they be alcohol and drug-free in college? I mean, every time you open the paper, too, we have somebody binge drinking, date rape. So many things come from drugs and alcohol.
But I think the important statistic that Maureen was talking about, which your viewers need to know, and we tell our parents, is that it's not true. That the fact that you're you're teaching them how to drink at a younger age will prevent them from abusing alcohol or other drugs later is in fact false.
Yes.
Yes, it is. And the younger a kid starts to drink, the much more likely they are to have an alcohol problem throughout their lives. So there are terrible statistics, and of course we know that alcohol and drugs, but alcohol plays a role into all sorts of terrible things, including teenage suicides, including criminal mischief, including sexual assaults and other kinds of assaults. We all want our kids to be healthy.
Driving. How many,
Wow.
but every day you open the paper and they're high on something driving into a house.
Well, that's the other crazy
There was a
part of it
51-year-old
now.
man on Broad Hollow Road in Melville.
Right. Well,
Just shot up
it's
and had an
interesting
accident.
because we find that a lot of younger kids now are very aware of it and
Yes.
talk about designated drivers and are very aware of their responsibilities when it comes to drinking, much more than some of the adults that we deal with. But
That's
then they
interesting.
also feel that being high is okay. Like they can drive when they're high. Like the drunk driving.
particularly.
The drunk driving might be problematic, so we should get ourselves a designated driver there. But if, we can get wasted and still drive. And that connection
Bizarre.
hasn't been made yet, which is really something that we're working on.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
Well, you
but if
can't
you're
do
on
a
pills, if
breathalyzer
you're...
for pot or pills.
Yes,
We're
but
working on that.
Yes.
But
But luckily,
as I said to you, I just came from the kratom, which is supposedly a plant-based substance that mimics opiates. So that doesn't come into the drug panel.
So
So Steve Chasman from LICAT, you have people on probation, you have people, in all those walks of life who, okay, well, I'm going to get drug tested in 2 days, so I'll just take this. This has already, it's grown in Thailand and Southeast Asia. All those countries have banned the substance
Yep.
from use because of the death associated with
Really?
it. And then we're going to sell it under the counter in a gas station here in the United States?
So now you're going to get us started because now you got into the driving thing, Linda. But the reality is that drugged driving is a huge problem all across the country, but in New York State. In New York State, to be charged with drugged driving, the drug has to be on a list. There is a fascinating, like, 5-minute piece from CBS News on synthetic drugs and the fact that there are Chinese drug mills that watch to see what goes on the list. They tweak the chemistry kit, and the next day there's a new substance out there that's no longer illegal. It's
But they
not
just have to
safe.
change one
But
small
who's
part of the
watching that?
formula.
Who watches what comes into this country?
The federal DEA says it's like playing whack-a-mole. They hit one down,
Yeah.
another one pops up. This is the problem with having lists. It has to be what the effect is on the body, not what the name of the substance is, and that's our thing
We've been
this
working
year.
on that for legislation.
We've been working on that for 7 years.
7
but this is the
years.
year.
Never mind the fact that I just, I
Better
was up
be.
in Saranac Lake. I'm on the board of directors at St. Joe's, and I went up there to work with the school district up there. There's 2 families up there that their kids ingested Kraton, and they are in the psychiatric ward because they've had they've had
Right.
breaks. They're not coming back from those breaks right now. They can't go back to school. They may never have that child back again.
That's all.
So
Well, the synthetic stuff is
Is
very frightening because
very
you don't know
frightening.
the effect that it'll have on your brain versus my brain versus her brain, and calling it synthetic marijuana. There's no marijuana in it. It's all chemicals.
it's all chemicals.
And it is frightening because we don't know what effect it'll have.
No, could shut down all your organs.
Exactly.
You don't know what it is. This stupid thing, it on low doses it's a stimulant. On higher doses it's an opiate.
Maybe.
Really? Maybe.
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 Well, when you consider the fact of the effects that it has on people, it's not like they can do legal studies on the effects on everybody.
Exactly.
Because you can't ethically get somebody high on this substance and then test the various effects it has. This has been the problem for years on a lot of drugs. There are a lot of studies coming out on marijuana now because we have these states that have legalized it. But, New York State has taken a very proactive medical marijuana stance, and they've really actually done a great job of making sure that it's not smokable, that there are a lot of scrutiny in place for this. The fear that people have would be that once you introduce medical marijuana, like they did in Colorado, the next step is that it is legalized marijuana across the board. Colorado's had a lot of problems.
And a lot of death.
A lot
Yeah.
of deaths, a lot of secondary
death.
ingestion, a lot of ingestion by kids.
But here's
because
the
they're having
kid,
gummy
you know-
bears
Right.
and foods.
You give me a cookie,
food,
I'm going to go
brownies,
and buy a
cookies.
cookie,
Yeah.
and I'm going to take, if it says a quarter of a cookie, and I'm a kid. Well, it's been 35 seconds, I don't feel anything, I'm going to eat some more.
Right.
And now I've eaten the cookie and I'm going to jump off the building. Because now, when it
Right.
does hit my system, I'm going to be sick.
So, there's another education component that's possible out there. And Madeline ran this last year with the Nassau County Police Department. We're going to do it again. It's called DITEP, Drug Impairment Training for Education Professionals. With-
I've actually seen this upstate with the state troopers. It's
It's
fascinating
great.
Right.
to look at the pupils.
Yep.
You look at eyes, they look at blood, blood pressure,
Yes.
pulse,
Right.
and what it does is these police officers. We've got police officers, very dedicated guys, who have
Absolutely.
received incredible training. It's hard to become a drug recognition expert, a DRE. Well, these guys are now sharing that expertise with school administrators and most especially school nurses, so that there's an early intervention because there's an early recognition that this kid is not just sleepy or
Right,
sick,
tired or
that
not
there is
feeling
impairment.
well.
Because that
Because-
is part of, you have teenagers.
Yeah.
They do. In the high school, they can act like that in the morning.
Right.
It is not a rite of passage.
Right.
No?
It's not a rite of passage.
But training people to recognize it, to
Yes.
get early intervention. Now you're back to your parents. When they get the phone call from the school nurse, let's not start threatening to sue the school. How about actually taking
I
that
like
child
you,
in for
Maureen,
assessment?
because that's what I say to parents all the time.
I'm going to get the DA in trouble. I'm sorry.
No, because I say the same thing. The school is not after you.
Right.
They're not singling out your child. They're trying, it does take a community and a village to raise this kid. Why would you, I want videotape. Did you have a warrant to go into his locker? These are not questions that you should be asking when someone's trying to step in front of and take the bullet
Well, yeah,
for your
I mean,
kid.
look, again, we just tell parents, stop sort of ignoring your gut. If you think something's wrong, something probably is wrong.
Something's way
Everyone
wrong
is
for a long
always
time,
trying to
yeah.
make an excuse. Oh, this, oh, that. No, just really stop and take a look at what's going on. And then, right, and not everyone's your enemy. Everyone's just looking to intervene at a time when intervention is possible and could be effective and
Yes.
successful. That's all we're saying. Do it now.
And that's not going to go on their record. Schools
Right.
have come a long way. They're
Yes.
not going to document it so that let's get your kid into college.
Right.
That's the outcome that they want too. They want this healthy young adult to leave their school a better person,
Coping skills.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's very important for us to have the drug recognition experts because that's the way, to your question
Yes.
about no breathalyzer, that's how we're doing it. We have trained professionals who get on scenes or who are at the testing centers to say, this person is acting like they're affected by something, their breathalyzer's at a 0, so they're not drunk, but there's something else going on here. And that's when we can bring in the professionals to say, no, they are in fact affected and intoxicated by virtue of pills or anything else. So it's important for
Yeah.
us impaired drug recognition experts that
Yes.
know what to look for and how to look for it. And we run a lot of our cases that way because we have to.
You have to. I know, because there's always somebody just trying to be a little bit smarter and ahead of the curve.
And folks should also be aware of the Good Samaritan law.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's not really known. It's a little confusing, but we've seen it. They had the kid at Hofstra who injected his girlfriend in the dorms, and he waited 16 hours before he called for help for her. So it's really important that they're not going to get arrested if they're calling
Not
in.
going to
We
get in
want the
trouble.
person into treatment.
Nothing.
And it's really critical. On a more positive note, we
Yes.
know there's going to be always a new drug. And we
It's
know
the
that
disease of addiction.
and
That's
it's
the
always
problem.
the desire will be there, and there'll be some new drug to deal with. But if you look back at what's gone on, say, in the last 8 years, we identified prescription drugs as the main problem. And look what's happened. Last week, the prescription drug law has gone into effect. iStop already 2 years old.
The
and now
electronic
went in.
prescriptions, right.
We also knew that as we dried up that problem, which we are, although there's still quite a few overdoses, it was going to switch the attention to heroin, which it has. We know that there needs to be better treatment. New Hope is on its way. We see the legislators asking to open up the psychiatric facilities in Suffolk. But there is a momentum going on, and I think that you should take heart that you're actually doing a pretty good job. And there's
No, it's
going.
Except that tomorrow I'll get a call. So I won't. It is. But for every 5 step forwards that we take, we seem to go back 6 steps. So, it's staying ahead of insurance companies, finding a different way to say no. And it's just staying ahead of this.
But just
You know,
keeping
it-
the conversation alive,
Yes,
Linda, is
keeping
so
the-
important. And I
so
can't thank you
important.
enough for what you do for our community, for parents, for people who are at their darkest hours and just want to reach out to someone who knows, who's been there, who can walk them through it, help them. That's so vitally important. So thank you for
Thank
the work
you.
that you're doing.
Thank you. But and you see now you're worried. The hour went very quickly, so we're going to wrap up. But I don't miss Thomas, the addict, not any second of any one day. Thomas, my son, I miss every second of every day. And parents need to understand that there's a definite disconnect between those two.
Right.
Drugs kidnap your children, and we need to get, you need to do everything that you possibly can to get in front of that bullet that's going to really take out your family. So education, 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 and prevention. Can't say enough about that. And please, if you need help, reach out for help. I can put you in touch with all of these people, but we can just, let's concentrate on getting your loved one the time and the attention and the placement that they need. This is a lifelong disease, but recovery works when you work your recovery. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I will have them back on. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Really, I can't thank you for taking your time out and for all the work that you do. 3 incredible people in government doing the right job. Thank you. Have a great week.